This is the true horrifying case of the 22-year-old Lindsay Ann Hawker from England who was brutally murdered in Japan by the infamous Tatsuya Itchihashi, a case that shocked two nations involving murder, self-inflicted body surgery, a killer on the run, and the tragic loss of a beautiful soul. The following video may contain graphic content. Viewer discretion is advised. Who was Lindsay Ann Hawker? Lindsay Ann Hawker was from Warwickshire, England, and lived with her parents Bill and Julia and her two sisters. A beautiful girl and bright student who received a degree in biology, and she was known for her boundless enthusiasm for life and adventure. Lindsay wanted to see the sights and sounds of the world and travel extensively with her boyfriend, Ryan Garside. They made plans for a world tour, but Lindsay took on a new teaching job in Tokyo, Japan, which delayed their travel plans. In October 2006, 22-year-old Lindsay arrived in Japan for her position at the Tokyo branch of Nova, Japan's largest private English school. As she was all alone in Japan, Lindsay told her family that Tokyo was safe and that she had made new friends there. On March 22, 2007, Lindsay traveled by train from work to home as she had adapted to do so as her normal routine on the Tozai Line train. During her journey, a stranger named Tatsuya Itchihashi approached her, saying that he was very interested in private English lessons as he wanted to go abroad for studies. Lindsay was hesitant and got off the train, after which he followed her to her apartment. He claimed to be one of her students, but Lindsay knew all her students well, and Tatsuya was not one of them. Tatsuya was very persistent and did not want to leave, begging her to give him a private English lesson. Lindsay was afraid, but her kindness took over as she invited the young strange man to her apartment, where he met her roommates. Tatsuya strangely took out a pen and paper and sketched a picture of Lindsay and signed it with his name and phone number. This picture was to become the first police evidence after her disappearance. But who was Tatsuya Itchihashi? Tatsuya Itchihashi was born in Gifu, Japan on January 5, 1979. He graduated with a degree from Chiba University, where he majored in horticulture. But despite his degree, Tatsuya never worked in his chosen field because he was born into a wealthy family and was too lazy to work. His mother was a dentist and his father was a well-known neurosurgeon. He was living off his parents' money and relied on his monthly allowance of $600. According to his college peers, Tatsuya was socially isolated and obsessed with violent manga. His girlfriend, however, described him as a serious and stable man, even though he had previously mugged a woman in the street and was given a formal warning for stalking. Tatsuya was obsessed with physical fitness and spent countless hours working out. Despite this regimen, his mental health was deteriorating, and he had told friends that he was feeling unstable. No one urged him to seek medical help, and he was developing a fixation on a random stranger, a young English language teacher from the UK, Lindsay Hawker. After the incident of Tatsuya drawing a sketch of Lindsay, Lindsay and Tatsuya emailed each other back and forth until she finally agreed to meet him in a cafe in order to give him a private English lesson. On March 25, 2007, Lindsay said goodbye to her roommates and left their apartment. Little did they know this would be the last time they would see Lindsay. Unfortunately, Lindsay never made it home to her roommates that night. As the cold March evening passed, Monday morning came on March 26th, where Lindsay failed to show up to work. Her colleagues were worried, but did not think too much of it as she could have felt ill. Her roommates grew worried as she did not come back home and were also aware that she did not go to work that day. They had tried to contact the police, but the message was not conveyed to the proper authorities within the department. On Tuesday, March 26th, the staff of the Nova school contacted Lindsay's father and told him that Lindsay had not shown up for her classes for 2 days. After receiving the chilling phone call from Lindsay's place of work, the Hawker family grew extremely worried and decided to call the Japanese authorities. Only then did the police take it seriously and took action upon locating Lindsay. The police began their search by first going to Lindsay's house, where they interviewed her roommates. Luckily, they had already met Itchihashi and had him as a suspect in mind. The police found the first clue, which was the sketch that she had left in the apartment. In Ichikawa, a suburban town east of Tokyo, 9 police officers assembled outside of Tatsuya Itchihashi's apartment. After knocking on his door with no answer, they went to his neighbors, which managed to peek through their balcony into his home. However, there was no sign of anybody home as there were no lights on. Neighbors later testified that they had heard the heavy sound of something striking metal and then something being dragged. Strangely enough, they saw his bathtub, which was moved from his bathroom onto his balcony. The police were worried that Lindsay was being held hostage. As they were getting ready to bust the door down by force, the door opened, which caught the police officers by surprise when Tatsuya stood in front of them with a backpack and barefoot. In a split second, Tatsuya tried to run away. One of the police officers grabbed his backpack, but Tatsuya managed to get by them and started running. Although he was barefoot, he managed to escape the officer as the building was confusing and had narrow hallways. Tatsuya had escaped into Tokyo City and left the authorities blind as he was nowhere to be found. Police went inside the apartment and found the naked body of Lindsay Hawker buried in the bathtub, which was filled with a mixture of compost soil and sand placed on the apartment's balcony. A small right hand protruded from the mixture of sand and soil. Lindsay had been gagged with a scarf and her hands and feet were bound with gardening ties. She had been subjected to an assault and bruises across her upper body. Forensics suggested the egg-sized bruises were inflicted with a fist. Other marks on her upper body were from collisions with furniture. Both Tatsuya and Lindsay knew martial arts, but Itchihashi was more of an experienced fighter, having achieved the level of black belt. Lindsay fought her attacker bravely, but Tatsuya was more powerful. He strangled her and broke the cartilage in her neck, leaving her dead. In her last moments, she had been subjected to assault. Forensics discovered that the mixture which Lindsay was in also contained a decomposing agent, which would help decompose her body faster. They found flower seeds on top of the mixture in order to disguise the bathtub as a flower pot. His idea was that eventually the flowers would be feeding off of her decomposing body. Another strange discovery by the police was that her head had been shaved, and hair was found in a plastic bag, which later tested positive for Lindsay's hair. In addition to that, they found several wigs in his apartment, indicating that he was a cross-dresser. On March 27th, Lindsay's parents received a call, informing them a body had been found. Her father, who had already booked a flight to Tokyo, was now traveling to identify his daughter. Police got CCTV footage of March 25th where Lindsay and Tatsuya were seen in a cafe ordering drinks. Lindsay appeared to be uncomfortable, as shown in the real CCTV footage. They sat there for about 50 minutes while Lindsay gave Tatsuya an English lesson. After the lesson, he told Lindsay that he had forgotten his wallet at home, and he asked if she could go with him so that he could pay her the fee for the lesson, which was about 3,500 yen. Lindsay agreed, and the pair got a taxi at around 1 p.m. local time and left. The taxi stopped in front of Itchihashi's apartment. According to his testimony, he used the excuse of having no money to lure her into his apartment. Lindsay asked the taxi driver to wait for her and went inside with Itchihashi. The taxi driver claims he got tired of waiting and left after 7 minutes when Lindsay didn't come back. He was the last person to have seen Lindsay Hawker alive. Police distributed 30,000 posters of Tatsuya throughout the country. His face had been put onto multiple news sites. Interviews were given by people who knew him but had no luck locating him. The police put him on nationwide wanted list, and now he was one of the most wanted people in Japan. They were desperate to catch him and released a new poster for Itchihashi, which included an image of the suspect disguised as a woman. They also released images of the drawing which he had made for Lindsay, hoping that someone would recognize his artistic style. Over the following weeks, multiple calls for sightings of Tatsuya were given by the police, but sadly all led to dead ends. He had become a ghost for not only weeks or months, but for years. The family of Lindsay were overwhelmed with the loss of their daughter and filled with fear that their daughter's killer got away. They traveled back to Tokyo and tried to single-handedly raise awareness for their daughter's killer. Her father even went as far as to meet the Japanese mafia Yakuza, offering them 2 bottles of whiskey as a present before asking them to help find his little girl. In 2008, 180 officers were assigned to investigate the case, but investigators were no closer to finding their suspect. Investigators looked into reported sightings of Itchihashi but couldn't find him. As they grew more and more frustrated and devastated, Lindsay's family launched a website appealing to the public to help determine Itchihashi's whereabouts. They had argued that the Japanese police force were lazy, which got the UK media involved as well. And while so many people were talking and writing about the case of Lindsay Hawker, her killer was still roaming free. In 2009, it was speculated that he had fled to the Philippines or committed suicide. The police released life-size cutouts of Itchihashi to raise awareness. Unfortunately, nothing could help find the killer of Lindsay Hawker. Tatsuya had traveled all the way across Japan to a northern part called Aomori and down to the southern part of Japan named Okinawa and still remained unnoticed. He later testified that he had also lived in an abandoned concrete bunker on a remote island in order to remain unnoticed. After fleeing, Tatsuya wandered around Osaka in 2009, 250 miles west of Tokyo, with no money. He often worked in construction sites in order to remain undetected and lived from one internet cafe to another. He also didn't contact any family members. He covered his face under masks and wore hats and glasses, carefully avoiding eye contact and surveillance cameras. He saved up all his money from his jobs in order to pay for cosmetic surgeries. This, however, was not the first time he had changed his face, as he later stated that while in the port of Aomori, he had performed a surgery on his own face to disguise his identity, using scissors to cut his lower lip to make it look thinner. His first attempt was unsuccessful because of the unbearable pain, but he finished the job in a few days later in a bathroom. While passing a police station, he saw a wanted poster with his face and one of his moles prominently featured. He then sliced the mole off his left cheek using a box cutter. After cutting his nose, he bound it up with a needle and thread to make it look thinner. He needed plastic surgery to disguise himself fully, and he needed more money to afford operations. Using the name and address of a dead person to get work with a construction company in Osaka, he saved up 1 million yen and spent most of the money on 2 plastic surgery operations, which included a nose uplift. He gave false names and addresses to all the clinics and remained unnoticed. In the summer of 2009, the Japanese National Police Agency raised the cash reward for information leading to Itchihashi's arrest from 1 million to 10 million yen. Ironically, it was his attempts to conceal his identity that ultimately gave him away, as he had foolishly accepted to take a before and after picture at the clinic which performed his plastic surgery. The cosmetic surgery clinic in Nagoya reported to the police when they saw unusual scars on Itchihashi's face and sent them pictures. Police released to the media a photograph taken immediately before his most recent surgery, and it worked. Itchihashi, who saw himself on the news, later wrote, "My heart raced. I gazed at it, trembling." He later stated that his plan was, as the previous times before, to flee Osaka and take shelter in one of the abandoned bunkers in the island of Okinawa. His plan was to take a ferry and remain free. Investigators received a phone tip on November 10, 2009, reporting a man resembling Itchihashi at a ferry terminal in Osaka. His luck had finally run out. Officers rushed to the scene and arrested Tatsuya Itchihashi before he could get away. Police took the suspect to Shimunue police station in Osaka. After taking his fingerprints, they confirmed it was Itchihashi. The reward money was divided among and dispensed to the staff of the cosmetic surgery clinic in Nagoya, an employee of the Osaka construction company where Tatsuya had worked, and an Osaka ferry company employee who had reported sighting Itchihashi. The killer of Lindsay was finally captured at last. Following the long-awaited trial, he was charged with abandoning a body and was later served with 2 warrants for rape and murder. 8 months later, on 4th of July 2011, his trial finally began. Itchihashi was initially charged with abandoning a body because he did not confess upon being arrested. Itchihashi admitted to suffocating Hawker and prevent her from screaming while he raped her. Prior to his trial, Itchihashi wrote to Ms. Hawker's parents and sisters, as in Japan defendants can get shorter sentences if the victim's family accepts their apology. Lindsay's family rejected the letter as a ploy and requested that the court show no mercy and give him the death penalty. During the first hearing of the trial, a weeping Itchihashi told the court, "Yes, I raped her. Yes, I agree that Lindsay died because of my actions, but I did not mean to kill her. Only Lindsay and I know what happened that day, but she can no longer speak for herself because of me. It is my responsibility to tell the truth throughout this trial." Before his sentencing, a cuffed and secured Itchihashi entered the courtroom and bowed to Hawker's family and Lindsay's parents, who were seated near the prosecutors. The Guardian reported that he prostrated himself in front of the couple in a dramatic show of remorse, though the family ignored him. The verdict was determined by a panel of 6 lay judges and 3 professional judges. The presiding judge, Masaya Hotta, read the ruling and described Itchihashi's actions to a full-capacity courtroom. Shortly after he entered his apartment, the defendant administered strong blows to the victim, especially around her right eye. He also assaulted other parts of her body and used tape to bind her to stop her from resisting when he raped her. Itchihashi raped her to satisfy his sexual desire, then tried to cover up the rape by killing her. He then attempted to conceal the murder by abandoning her body. The crime was inexcusable and savage. He has repeated irrational, unnatural statements that are contradicted by the evidence. We do not believe that he has reflected on his crime from the bottom of his heart. It is extremely rare in Japan to impose the death penalty for killing only one person, and Itchihashi had no previous convictions. On July 21st, 2011, Tatsuya was sentenced to life in prison for the murder of Lindsay Hawker. Lindsay's family asked for the death penalty but were denied, as the court found that the death penalty was not appropriate due to the fact that he had no previous convictions. The Hawker family proceeded to share the following to the media. "We've waited a long time for today. We've waited 4.5 years for justice. Lindsay loved Japan and you have not let her down. Itchihashi, you have taken away a precious life, destroyed a whole existence, and stolen countless memories from us." As he accepted his fate, he had authored and published his own book admitting to Lindsay's murder. It was mostly consisting of details on his escape and things he did to avoid detection. The book, named Until I Was Arrested, was offered with all profits and royalties to Lindsay's family, and over 150,000 copies would sell worldwide. The offer, however, was rejected by her family as they found that no amount of money would bring back their beloved daughter. In 2013, a movie named I Am Itchihashi, Journal of a Murderer, was created based on the book, to not much success as people were upset that the spotlight was on him and not Lindsay. Questions remain as to, is Tatsuya Itchihashi still alive in 2024? Well, following his conviction, Tatsuya Itchihashi was confined at the Nagano prison, where he is a Class B offender. A fellow inmate said Itchihashi had been assigned to work at plant number 10. Itchihashi tended to be aloof, only engaging with those with whom he felt comfortable. The inmate also noted that Itchihashi has many passionate fans and received monthly visits and financial donations from his parents. According to Article 28 of the Japanese Penal Code, Itchihashi will be eligible for parole after serving only 10 years of his sentence. However, the average length of incarceration for life terms is 32 years and 10 months. According to verdict and sentencing, the highly anticipated trial verdict drew 950 spectators who lined up for 60 seats in the court's public gallery. In conclusion, this is in memory of Lindsay Ann Hawker, who was a beautiful young woman inside and out. She was a very brave girl who took on a beautiful journey during the very early stages of her life. Not only was she hardworking, she was fearless, adventurous, and intelligent. She was kind to all. Her light always shined through. She is loved and will be forever dearly missed by her family and all those who knew her. If you made it this far, I just want to thank you for watching. My name is Tan, and welcome to Crime Time. If you enjoyed this video, I would appreciate it if you gave it a like. That helps out with the YouTube algorithm. And subscribe and turn on all notifications so you don't miss out on any of my uploads. Once again, thank you so much for watching, and hopefully I will see you on the next one.